Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Midnight Texas. A fantastic season finale with so much awesomeness that went down, and obviously we'll break everything down bit by bit. But first of all, just like ultimately what was what is Manfred's plan in this whole situation, and it ends up being basically to fight evil, you got to know evil. So essentially, he brings in like a whole bunch of demonic spirits into his body, which was kind of badass seeing them. Like they're in ghost spirit form, but they look like monsters. They're not like just, I guess it's supposed to represent, because they're such evil people that their spirits are malformed and become monsters to represent, reflect their souls or whatever. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, and him putting like multiple spirits inside of his body. Like by the end of the episode, yeah, he was like, yeah, I had to let 6 spirits into my body. So that was crazy. I was wondering, because obviously, like, immediately my brain, like, especially last episode, I was like, okay, this is gonna be like some sacrificial stuff. Like, he's gonna have to sacrifice himself to do it. And now in retrospect, it's like, okay, so that's most likely what the original dude who sealed it 1,000 years ago did. Why his body was so broken and burned, most likely from the demons. Like the evil spirits he had brought. Like, you know, it's a lot for a regular human body. Even a regular possession is bad enough, but like stacking demons on top of demons and evil malevolent spirits inside of you, that's got to take like a huge toll, which is why Lim was offering that, yo, here's my blood. I also appreciate they kind of also did this last second, because they never really brought this up for the rest of the season. Is like how vampirism works in this. Like, you have to be bitten to be turned. Which should have guessed, but like there's no angle of like drinking blood and that ultimately makes you a vampire. Like, you know, going by the Vampire Diary standards, like for that, like to become a vampire, you have to have vampire blood in your system. And if you die at any point in time, in like, I think it takes like 24 hours for it to work out of your system, whatever the case may be, you become a vampire. So it doesn't seem like it works like that. Though Lim does bring up there are ramifications. It will be bad for the body. It might do something to them. Maybe it will be something we'll see in the future. Like, it'll give them like some kind of blood like lust or something like that. Like, we don't know exactly what the side effects are to the extent. Obviously, like, the end of the episode took place like a week later. There haven't been any from Olivia, which her story took a surprise, because I was thinking like, okay, they're setting it up, so it's like, oh man, she's about to die. Lim's not going to be willing to do that, and then I thought he was going to bite her. But this is before we learned about like blood, and I was like, oh yeah, the moment I found out about blood, I was like, oh yeah, because it has blood. I mean, great. Like, all he has to do is give her his blood, but then once again, there are ramifications for it. It's not good for the human body. We don't really know what that exactly means, but I'd be interested to find out in the future. But but I was thinking that was going to be it, and maybe she'll hold regret against him, because it's like now she's a vampire, because it feels like that could have been where they were heading, because they're setting up the whole thing of like, oh, like she doesn't want to be a vampire, she wants to eventually die, like to have a normal life and everything. So still leaves room for that to possibly be a thing later on, that maybe like going forward, maybe he can't do it to her a second time. There is kind of another, I know I'm kind of getting off book here, but another thing kind of similar to this. If you never read the manga or an anime called Rosario Plus Vampire, there's very interesting ramifications for like a vampire injecting a human with their blood. It makes them super strong and everything, which is what Lim was trying to give the blood to Manfred in the first place, to make his body super strong so that he can handle it. But like overexposure to vampire blood over a long period of time will eventually take its toll in its own respective situation in that series, and had a very interesting turnabout. And I'm curious, would they do the same thing in this, where ultimately, it's kind of a spoiler, but you turn into something else. Like, I'm curious, will that ultimately lead to, like, if it kept happening over and over and over again, because maybe Olivia's like, okay, there's no harm in it. It's like, oh, there's no real big side effects, and she keeps drinking Lim's blood and over and over and over again, but then eventually it turns her into something just as like a vampire or worse, you know. So like I said, like, that's kind of spoilers for the Rosario Plus Vampire, which I was mentioning, but that's in its own self and all. I'd be curious to see if that was something like that, or would it just ultimately like eventually just randomly just kill someone just because of it? So would it like slowly start destroying their immune system or something like that? I don't know, attacking their body. I also appreciate, probably hands down, one of my favorite moments of the episode being like, whoa, I can't believe that just happened. It's like Boba was like, well, you know why Kokonar wants you, right? Oh, he wants you because you're a virgin. It's like, well, we can mediate that, we can fix that situation, and Fiji's like, wait, what? You're serious? He's like, well, yeah. She's like, is this really the time to be having it? So I was like, well, we can't wait till after the apocalypse. And it's like, I was like, is this really happening? It's like, in all honesty, that's kind of the best way to keep Kokonar from ever coming after Fiji, is she's no longer a virgin. But it's so interesting that that was the solution. Didn't even cross my mind to think that is a possible solution, isn't it? And it's just like, and they ended up having sex, and it ended up making this. Kokonar couldn't. I mean, I think, Fiji's still powerful, but she's probably not as powerful as she was. I mean, still, they kind of had the whole thing where Bobo was kind of like, doesn't matter, like, what makes you powerful is your kindness. Like, the fact is, of who you are is why you're so powerful, that kindness within you. So, probably make it so that she might still be as powerful, maybe not. I mean, I'm curious to know, like, how much her power level is different based on that now. So, I mean, we did see like the moment like that happened, like a wave went out and it took care of the wraiths, which I also thought was kind of interesting because I think I brought this up last episode, like the whole Jeremy thing was a manipulation. Turns out it was, because all he was a wraith designed to look like Jeremy. They could all look like Jeremy too. It's all for the purposes of getting to Fiji psychologically, because he knew how to attack her. He knew that was a vulnerable memory of her, a vulnerable moment for her that he could, take advantage of. Because I brought that up previously, like, oh, how did he get Jeremy's soul and everything? It's like, is that supposed to mean that Jeremy went to hell or something like that? Turns out that's not the case. Like I said, it just ended up being manipulation, but still, that was kind of cool. It's also interesting too, because obviously I talked about earlier Olivia being hurt, needing the blood and everything, but it's kind of interesting seeing how like powerful a wraith's touch can be. I wonder what's like the explanation for that. I guess like, wraiths represent the coming of like a powerful demon, but I guess maybe they because I always in my head have always thought of wraiths as like a supernatural representation, not quite death, but almost like I always equate them to something similar to death. So maybe that's why their touch hurts you, because it represents death, but because it held on to Olivia so long, the damage went beyond. Most people, it probably just a quick touch and let go, but it held on for a while, so it burned deeper than just the surface. It went deep, probably attacked her organs, her insides, essentially. So, but obviously the big moment of it was Manfred going up against, Kokonar, and it just being like a battle of energy waves, which I thought was pretty badass. I still appreciate like him absorbing that last spirit, and it ended up making his eyes turn black. His black, like I would assume blood coming. I mean, it looked black, but it could have just been because of the nighttime and everything. But blackish blood or whatever coming from his ears and his eyes and his mouth. And ultimately beating Kokonar. I was thinking like, oh man, we get like a 4-way team up. You get demon infected, Manfred with Lim and Rev. I mean, obviously he stayed locked up because he's more of a like, you can't really count on him in this fight, so it's like might as well just keep him locked away. But him, Lim and Joe, I thought they were all going to attack him. I mean, Joe tried, but then he got like smacked away, like pow, like it was nothing. So it seems like Kokonar is dead. They say like he's gone, but I don't know if he's dead or whether he's just like, I'm going for now, but I will be back. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, he seems like the main demon to deal with right now. But I mean, even then, we don't know if he's like top tier demon. He might be on the lower or middle like totem when it comes to like hierarchy of like demons and stuff like that. I mean, he's got power and stuff like that. He's powerful. He's got allies and stuff like that. But I mean, who's to say there isn't demons more powerful than him? Most likely. I doubt we're done with the whole demon angle and all that. It was also interesting too that Manfred kind of like sent all those spirits to hell too. So I mean, it coincides that we do know he has spirit control over them. So like them leaving his body, he's just like get out, and they have to basically do what he says. So. Everything ended a lot more positively than I thought. I thought it might be a situation where it's like, okay, maybe we'll leave it off where it's like, oh, Kokonar is actually still alive. Like, like I brought up last episode, maybe walking on Earth in human form or something. I was thinking like maybe the season wouldn't end with like fighting him. Maybe he'd like be awakened and freed, and then like that'd be like the stinger at the end of the season. But nevertheless, that was taken care of. Another stinger I didn't see coming that I really loved is, I think the character's name was in it Madonna. Her actually she actually works for Olivia's dad, and he's like, yeah, your daughter's okay, she almost had a touch and go, do not come to midnight, you're just gonna make things worse. I'm like, that is so good, because remember what Bowie said. She's like, really, you want me to tell everyone how you really got the money for this bar? I was like, I kept wondering, I was like, what is that? That's going to come up in some shape or form. And never really got an answer, but now it did. Because I was wondering, I was like, why specifically her? I mean, she's the only person like not involved in everything that Creek could call, but it's like, it's just kind of interesting to me because she's kind of part of the inner circle and everything. I'm like, I was like, oh well, I'll just leave it at. And it's like, oh, we brought her back to reveal that. And I'm like, that's so good. Because, Olivia had her eyes focused on everything else, like other people. Like probably no shape or form did she ever think like it'd be someone that close to her that would be. I mean, the fact is that Bowie says that makes it seem like Olivia, like Madonna has been watching Olivia for a while now. So I mean, I don't know how long she's been in Midnight. Like I'd love to kind of get that in the future too, like a look at how everyone came to Midnight. I mean, kind of got a little bit of a taste of that with Lim, but other than that, we don't really know like this. I mean, we know circumstances around Creek and her family, why they came to Midnight and everything, but like everyone else specifically, I mean, you could argue, I mean, really when it all stems down from it, like, it all comes from the fact is that like, oh, the pull of the veil pulling supernatural is there. Maybe this entire time it's slowly been luring people in. I could make another comparison to another show, but then I feel a little shitty doing that, so I won't do it because I do it too much already. But nevertheless, I mean that'd be kind of interesting. But I love that, dude. Because, like, the fact is, we met a guy that was following Olivia, and she brought him back to Midnight. But she was debating whether or not to kill him or not. It was like, oh, here's a message from my dad. Tell him not to. Not unless it was a more recent thing, because maybe she wasn't watching Olivia the entire time. Maybe it was just like, after that last dude, he got in contact with her, like, hey, you need some money, don't you? Okay, watch out for my daughter. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, so... I mean, when it's all said and done, like they ended up getting married, like Lim and her ended up getting married, which is sweet, beautiful that they're together. There's also that line that she was like telling Creek, hey, if I don't make it, tell Lim I would have come back. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Like it's, I guess it's supposed to represent the fact is like I'm sure she doesn't really go back to any place she ever, like, cause there's no place that has sentimental value for her like Midnight does. Midnight, she has her family and friends. That includes Lim, you know, it falls in that category of family. That's kind of what, you know, the Rev was getting at the end of the episode. Basically, they've all kind of been loners their entire life because of their respective situations. But now that Midnight represents that family and everything, and it's just a beautiful thing to see them together and everything. And I also appreciate Olivia being like, yeah, like the fact is that she's very angry. Like the reason why she does what she does is because of men like her dad. You know, just being who they are and the way they are, it makes her angry, and why she latches out. Kind of like. It took meeting an undead guy like Lemuel to kind of tap into that human side of her that she probably just kind of lost, you know, along the way, just doing what she's done and everything revolving around her dad. But that was just so cool. But the point I was thinking of, like, eventually, even if she was slightly older, at some point she would have went back to Midnight, and that's kind of sweet. Because for Lim, it's not even about her. Like, there's still the whole aspect of, yeah, they're married and everything, but like, there's still the aspect of she will eventually die. So, but even then, that's a situation of like, I'd rather her like die of natural causes. We live a long, happy life together. He even brought up something interesting too, that he's never actually been married before, and too either, because I'm sure the whole finite aspect to it and everything. So I don't know, it'd be interesting to see going forward what, like I said, also what Olivia's whole situation is, plus what Lim, you know, whether there be more, like, would he eventually ever have to turn her, or like turn her because of circumstances, whatever the case may be. Like I said, overall, just like a fantastic season finale. I will go ahead and say I am not aware whether or not, at the time of recording, whether or not this is being renewed for a second season. I really hope so, because I really like this, and I'd love to see what they do in the second season. Like, they haven't really built anything up to be like, oh, watch out for this, except for like the whole thing at the end where it's like, it seems like some people are coming in to like construct someone bought the hotel and they're willing to buy stuff, and it's like, oh, you're moving into Midnight. Well, you probably shouldn't do that, because Midnight is, well, Midnight. And it'll probably be a situation of more and more people coming to Midnight, and then we might have more of that aspect that kind of popped up at the beginning, where everyone outside of Midnight is like, yo, stay away from Midnight. There are freaks that live there. Maybe we see a little bit more of that. Maybe see an element of more supernaturals coming to Midnight. You know, maybe not just bad guys, but good guys as well. Other people wanting to make Midnight their home, and just kind of like making them, you know, hey, like, this is, oh, you're here. Oh, yeah, this thing, we're going to help you understand, like, your gift and everything. You've been on your own. Join the Midnight family, you know, or something like that. I think that'd be kind of neat. Also, obviously, the ramifications for what Manfred did, because we see him laying in bed with Creek and he has his like sun out and his eyes are wide open. I'm assuming that's supposed to mean like he didn't fall asleep at all, because for him, when he welcomed all of them in his body, he saw and felt what they felt. So probably every bad thing that they've ever done, it's there, and it's probably making it hard for him to sleep. Plus he's bleeding from his ear. He even asked Creek like, oh, you hear that shaking? She's like, yeah, why wouldn't I? It's like, oh, because he had to determine whether or not that was it's like all in his head or whether that was really happening. So I'm curious to see like what would be the ramifications, like what has that done to his body, and is it something that even blood could fix? Is it like a body situation, or is it like a body / soul situation, like his own soul's been polluted or something like that? I don't know. I mean, like I said, surprisingly enough, everything ended happily. You have Chewie back in town. Things are kind of calmed down. He doesn't feel the pull of the veil anymore. Granted, it may only last 1,000 years, but 1,000 years is a long time. So, and also, like, you know, as I kept bringing up, you know, Olivia's dad, I love to kind of finally meet him and see what kind of person he is. Like, you know, obviously from Olivia's perspective, he's kind of a shitty dude. The reason why he was always away, he never really was around. But then that begs the question of like, what kind of job does he have? Does he have something similar to Olivia? Is he like a crime boss or something like that? That's initially was what I thought Olivia's whole storyline was going to be, that her dad's a crime boss. But there's still wiggle room to make it so that he's a very, very bad guy or something like that. Maybe he has something to do with this construction, because he is like, even though Madonna told him like, hey, stay away from this whole like midnight situation, you're just going to make things worse. Well, then it'd be kind of interesting to see him pop up and see what that did going forward, you know? So I'd also be, like I said, just in general, be curious about what other forces, what other supernatural things will they face. Like I said, because nothing is being pulled towards midnight anymore, because the veil is supposedly closed, but it might be a temporary like stitch work that, like Joe said, maybe it'll last 1,000 years. Maybe it'll work a lot less. Maybe in that time frame was enough for not just Kokenar, but something else to slip out as well. You know, might be dealing with that, and we just don't know about it yet until like, you know, if a possible season 2 roll around. Like I said, I don't know if it's getting renewed for a second season, but I really hope so, because I'd love to see what they do with it. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.